It's exactly 12:32 and our final interview for today. Thank you so very much for keeping me company right up to now. Next on the show is Dr. Florencia Belvedere. We're going to be talking about a toolkit for public servants, and it all has to do with whistleblowing. So let's hear what this is all about. I was recently invited, I think it happened last week, Thursday. There was a webinar that was put together by the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, but unfortunately it happened at the very same time as my program goes out between 11 and 1, so I was not able to be part of the webinar. Dr. Florencia was one of the speakers, I believe, at the webinar. They did, obviously, there was a lot of input from the Public Affairs Research Institute. Let's hear what they're all about. What was their contribution at the webinar? And what is it that we as the public or public servants ought to know about this toolkit? And how is it going to better, I should imagine, service delivery and also stamp out corruption, obviously, as far as government officials, government departments, etc. is concerned. Dr. Florencia Belvedere, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me, Julie.
My pleasure entirely.
So indeed, what we about a week ago exactly, we launched exactly a toolkit, what we call a toolkit for public servants. As you said, I work with the Public Affairs Research Institute. I'm the coordinator for their state reform program. The state reform program at PARI looks at issues of reform in key areas of the state to cut down issues of political interference and enhance accountability, right?
So how long have you been in operation? I must admit, it's the first time I've heard of you when I was invited to the webinar. And I thought, wow, we're certainly making progress in the country if we have such institutes on board.
Yes, we've been around for 10 years, actually. And we are associated to WITS, to the University of the Witwatersrand. So, and also PARI even runs a program on organizational institutional studies. Again, trying to deal with a lot of issues around the state, around accountability, and a lot of our work in the state reform program has been around public administration, looking at issues of recruitment, looking at issues of public procurement. We've been quite involved also with the public procurement bill and issues of transparency and how also do we cut down on some of the challenges we've experienced, I mean, firsthand with a lot of the COVID PPE procurement, but more broadly, how do we really make sure that we can tighten some of the gaps that exist? So the toolkit for public servants was specifically aimed, again, public servants, trying to support public servants who often find themselves in difficult situations about how to go about reporting wrongdoing, reporting corruption. And we did discuss the issue with public servants and also with some public sector unions who were saying, yes, a lot of the times we don't have all the information. And so we wanted a resource. They wanted something, a resource that would support those individuals who are willing to come forward and take this action. So the toolkit has two parts. One, and we did it predominantly online, given COVID and everything. And so it has a number of hyperlinks that also allows people who read it to access other documents, online. But it has a part A, which kind of looks at a lot of the frameworks and code of conduct for the public service, what the public service acts is and the regulations, because there is a duty on public servants to report wrongdoing and corruption. Right?
Now, when you say that, Dr. Belvedere, I kind of wonder at the type of evidence. I mean, I could be a whistleblower. I could probably out of spite or jealousy, or felt that I was done in, I would try and get my colleagues or my boss into trouble by making false allegations against them, just to, get them out of the system. How strong are you on the type of evidence that you look for?
Well, I mean, the issue there is that, in principle, and one of the things that is I'm glad you talk about that, because it's one of those keys that is at the center of any reporting, right? The principle of good faith, right? You can't just do this out of spite or out of revenge. Sometimes people feel so hard done by the fact that they've tried to report something and then they get treated so badly that they say, I'm going to get back at somebody. But the protections that are currently in law for whistleblowers, right, which is through what's called the Protected Disclosures Act. That act requires that the disclosure or the reporting that is done in good faith, first and foremost. Now, if it's not done in good faith, and if you've been involved in the wrongdoing, and now you're trying to maybe get out of it, that will only get you maybe some mitigating circumstances. Yeah, if the matter is dealt with, and now you're trying to get less of a sanction. But if you're doing this on false information, then you are liable to criminal, to some kind of criminal liability. So the principle of good faith there is important. Now, I think it's also important to remember that somebody, like for instance, I might come across information that I think is irregular, that I think there is something wrong. So the law doesn't require you to know for a fact that the information is true, but you have to have a reasonable belief that it's true or that there is something fishy going on. So there is that leeway, so that you might be wrong, but you might really believe that there is something wrong going on. So there are protections for people in those situations.
So if I do blow the whistle on someone,
yes,
I may not have any hard evidence. I hope you can hear me clearly, because I'm getting a lot of feedback here. Can you hear me clearly? Okay, I'm sure that's okay.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, brilliant. So in good faith, I believe that someone has, or a group of people are up to no good in some state department, and I approach I approach you, or I don't know, Open Society Foundation of South Africa. You work closely with them, do you not? How do I know that I am actually coming to the right people with my concerns, number one? And also, you then do the necessary investigation. You'll map this out for us. You'll do the necessary investigations and find that there was nothing untoward, that I just allowed my imagination to run away with me. I was not seeking revenge. I really did this out of concern for the department in question. What happens to me and my protection going forward? Am I going to be trusted again? And are you going to be taking any action against me?
Sure. I think I just want to clarify that unfortunately, PARI doesn't have the capabilities to deal with the complaints and investigate. But you're raising the point about what would a public servant do, and a public servant also, in terms of the law, right? The public service, every department, every municipality, they must have a procedure that would allow somebody to report, right? So there has to be an internal procedure where I should be able to, either to a supervisor, or if my supervisor is implicated, to somebody else who could assist me. There has to be a written out and a procedure that is communicated to public servants, right? Now, if you think that you can't report internally because you think that the information will disappear or nothing's going to happen, or you feel that there's too many people implicated, then you can proceed. The Protected Disclosures Act allows you to report, for instance, to the public protector, to the Public Service Commission, which would be a key one in terms of the public service. And there's about 30 other organizations that are in the law to whom you could report, depending on the issue, right? So if it's a tax issue, maybe you need to go to SARS. Maybe if it is something about qualifications of somebody, of a foreign person, you would go to SAQA, to the South African Qualifications Authority, etc. There's a lot of entities you can approach. Now, the issue about and that entity has a duty to investigate it, right? The entity you report to. So if you take it, for instance, what happens with the Public Service Commission, you can use their national hotline and report a matter. And then the challenge there is that the Public Service Commission refers it to the original department to investigate, which is a bit problematic at times because people feel that, the same people implicated are not going to want to investigate. But maybe the public protector or the auditor general or the Human Rights Commission, if it's a human rights violation. So they would need to now go ahead and investigate that. If they find out that what you reported wasn't really wrongdoing, right? In principle, nothing should happen to you, right? But you're also raising something which is fundamentally important, which goes hand in hand with being able to feel safe about reporting something, and that's creating kind of an ethical organizational culture in the public service that supports whistleblowers, right? That I'm not seen as an impimpi or a pariah because I am raising this, or that I'm unpatriotic because I am raising an issue. And that's the challenge that a lot of people face. And that's why a lot of people don't want to come forward, because even though they're doing this for the good of the country, and at the launch, we had Cynthia Stimple, who was a key whistleblower at South African Airways. And, she was describing the experience, that you get treated all of a sudden as somebody that nobody wants to, maybe people don't want to talk to you, people want to stay away, they think you're in trouble.
They don't trust
you even after you report. I mean, look at somebody like her or Bianca Goodson, right? Capable women, strong women who now can't get employed because people think, oh, you're a troublemaker, but it's like they're the good troublemakers. So in principle, the Protected Disclosures Act is an act that protects whistleblowers against the kinds of things that you're talking about, against that retaliation or maybe attack from an employer when you try to stand up and do the right thing, and all of a sudden you get charged with misconduct. And saying that you disclosed information of the company or the public service that was in your contract of employment, saying you're not allowed to do that because there's a confidentiality agreement. Now, the good thing is that the act has been strengthened to say an employer can't use that, right? Even if you have a contract that says there's confidentiality and you cannot disclose information, if you're doing so as part of the process of making what's called a protected disclosure, meaning a disclosure that is done in good faith, following the procedures that we discussed a bit, whether your employer or other organizations that could assist you, or eventually, if all else fails, even the media, right? So there are some protections that are there, but nonetheless, I think we're still a long ways away from praising our whistleblowers. We still
what happens, Florencia, what happens if I do blow the whistle on someone?
Yeah.
Corrective action is taken. Whatever happens or needs to happen does happen. But I then go back to the workplace And somehow the other, I mean, here you're talking about protecting our whistleblowers, but somehow the other, it gets found out that I blew the whistle and I start getting victimized. Who's going to protect me then? I may, that my position in the department may become so untenable that I'm forced to hand in my resignation and lose my livelihood. Or also my life is threatened. We've heard of lots of such cases where people's lives and their families have been threatened. So what sort of protection is in place in those instances?
Yes, I think, I mean, you're putting your finger on some of the key weaknesses of what we have in terms of protecting whistleblowers. Certainly, if you're still employed, because remember, what a lot of times happens is that the moment people blow the whistle, as opposed to focusing on the content of what the whistleblower is bringing to your attention, the attention goes on victimizing the messenger, right? We shoot the messenger. So then comes the disciplinary action and dismissal actions and so forth. But say that doesn't happen and you're feeling nonetheless very uncomfortable. Certainly, one of the protections that exists is that you could ask your employer, if possible, to transfer you elsewhere, right? That would be one way to deal with it. The other is that if you are forced to resign, right? If there's something like constructive dismissal, you could approach the CCMA, right? And then fight it in terms of, or the labor court, to fight against what would be an automatic unfair dismissal. But again, the recourse is there, but you need the resources. And at present, the challenge that we have in South Africa is that there isn't, in other countries, for instance, there's sometimes what's called the whistleblower house or advice centers that are sometimes partially funded by the state and by civil society. But what they do is that they act like a one-stop shop in a way for whistleblowers to get advice, to get maybe financial assistance, legal assistance, right, in terms of fighting these things. In terms of the physical security, I think we are far away from meeting the needs of whistleblowers. I mean, we've had some terrible cases in South Africa about people being killed. And our Witness Protection Act only applies if you're a witness in a criminal case, right? You could approach the National Prosecuting Authority for protection. But beyond that, it's really quite difficult to get that protection that you're talking about. Whereas, for instance, in countries like South Korea, like Ghana, you've got the either the Human Rights Commission, or you have separate anti-corruption agencies, which we don't have in South Africa. We have that debate going on, right? Whether we should have kind of a standalone anti-corruption agency that are able to provide physical protection if need be, work with the police to provide protection for whistleblowers and their families. In South Africa, that's a bit harder. I mean, it would have to be through some kind of protection order. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have, people posted outside your door, if you are, do you know what I mean? We don't have that. A protection order, we have those for certainly sexual abuse or harassment, those kinds of things. But, we're dealing with different levels of physical danger here as well, right? So those are some of the things, like you're rightly, putting your finger on them, that act as have a lot of dissuading power for whistleblowers. So a lot of times what whistleblowers might want to do is to do it completely anonymously, not even confidentially, but just anonymously, because the dangers that they could lose their jobs, that they could face kind of physical insecurity and so forth, and danger, are things that they have to weigh up. It's a huge decision.
I don't know if the same can be said to South Africa, but I get a sense that whistleblowers in other parts of the world, clearly in the States and the UK, etc., actually get paid for very relevant information to stamp out corruption or whatever it is that's going wrong in federal and state departments. Is the same, can the same be said here? And if we do talk about monetary rewards, are we not going to be creating monsters? Because now you're going to go around looking.
The business.
Yeah, absolutely. And then because they're being paid for their services, are they being protected? Will they be protected? But I don't think that's happening in South Africa.
No, you're right. You're right. It's not. It's something that keeps coming up. Certainly, as PARI at the Public Affairs Research Institute, we've been advocating for that kind of incentivized or encouraged whistleblowing in relation to the public procurement bill, to say if somebody brings to the attention of the state the possibility that a lot of money could be lost to the state, right? Or that money has been lost to the state because of wrongdoing, and the state recovers part of that money, that then a whistleblower would be able to get a reward as a 20% of that amount, right? As an incentive for people to report. And that's happened. That's happened in many countries, like you say, the US, South Korea. They recover loads of money by doing that. Now, there's a lot of safeguards to that. The False Claims Act in the United States is one such law. You have to, your information needs to be credible, and you have to come with new information that is not something that is out there. And it all depends on whether the state is going to fight for the money or the state is not going to fight for the money. So that if you fight for the money on behalf of the state, you get a cut, right? Or even if the state fights for it, you would get something for your efforts. Now, the argument, like I said, for public servants particularly, there's a duty, right? This is what you must do. This is about behaving ethically and so forth. But nonetheless, I would argue that it doesn't take away from the fact that whistleblowers incur so many costs. Because remember, it's not just the legal, it's not just maybe the physical, it's the emotional toll that all of this takes on you, that has on you, on your family, on those around you, and there is a lot of support that is required. And also remember that, like you said, you might lose your job. So some of that money could also help to enable such individuals to reestablish themselves. Already there are safeguards about conditions, right? In terms of the quality of information. Is it new information? Is it relevant? Can it be verified and so forth? So it's not just that if you come forward and you say X is stealing 300,000 rands or 3 million rands or 50, that you're going to get something back. So it's a very long process that you have to, and it also would include possibly somebody legally representing you, so that there would also be costs for it.
Whose cost? Would it be for my, would it be for my account, or would the department that one approaches to blow the whistle to say so-and-so is costing the state X amount of money? Who's going to foot the bill for the legal costs? And why would I need legal support?
Well, a lot of times there will be actions that are taken against you personally, right? To shut you up. So that's what I'm saying. Like, for instance, if you blow the whistle, and then your employer says, oh, you should have talked to me. Why did you go to the media? Or why did you, So now they sue you on the basis that you're bringing the organization into disrepute. So now it's a misconduct charge on the basis that you acted in some unlawful way. So now they try to fire you. So now you have to get your own maybe legal representative to go to a high court or the labor court to get an interdict to stop the employer from continuing with that action. That action, those costs are usually for your own, you have to foot that bill.
Right. In
Yeah.
terms of what we're talking about, this toolkit, is
Yes.
this only relevant in terms of public servants? What about civil society? What about people that are employed at large corporates, or even in the communities that they live in? They suspect something untoward, whatever it might be, or perhaps see activities that could put the country or the community in danger in
Yes,
terms of terrorism, in terms of cells being set up or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the toolkit, the first part is much more, geared towards public servants. But the part B, which deals step by step on how to do a disclosure, how to talk, how to report wrongdoing, it has broader application, and it would apply to workers, in the private sector as well. The only thing that we've got at the moment is that, the Protected Disclosures Act is geared towards protecting people at their workplaces predominantly. So it doesn't really deal with the person on the street. The person on the street usually has to resort to, whether it is anti-corruption hotlines or numbers, or probably approach a public protector, or if it's the state, or approach other entities to report wrongdoing. So that's also one of the aspects that we need to strengthen, because it doesn't just happen at work. It could happen, like you're saying, in a community, or you could see, if you saw the police engaging in activity that was wrong, then a community member would have to report it probably to IPID, right, to the entity that investigates police conduct. So there, the procedure might be a bit different. Indeed, but I mean, in principle, the description of the Protected Disclosures Act would apply both to public and private sectors. So in that sense, toolkit has broader applicability.
Okay, we're coming to the end of the show. Where does one access this toolkit from? And what other bit of important information do you want to leave us with this afternoon?
Okay, so the toolkit is available online at our website. It's www.pari.org.za. So people can download it. And like I said, it has hyperlinks that take you to other documents as well to check. And I think that what we need to, what we've been saying as civil society, we need to constantly support whistleblowers. And I think we have to constantly, from our youngest generations, just inculcating the importance of speaking up, of doing the right thing, and also supporting those who've had the courage to come forward. Because as we've seen from the Zondo Commission, we would be nowhere if it weren't from a number of the whistleblowers who had the courage to come forward.
Too true. Dr. Florencia Belvedere from PARI, thank you indeed for those insights. Let's hope and pray by way of this interview, people become more conscientized about making this a safe and a clean society. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It's exactly 1:00, and you know what that means. Time for me to wrap up. Thank you indeed for your company. Been lovely having you on the show today. Please take care on the roads. Till the next time, as always, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khudafiz from me, Julie Alli.